Hello, welcome to part two of understanding what it means for the Lord to be jealous and why he scattered his people, as well as how the Gentiles are used as jealousy to bring his people back to him. That doesn't mean through the people of a bloodline, but the people that are chosen to know the Lord, for they would be jealous over those that don't know the Lord, but would preach of him. So we're going to go into Matthew chapter 15, verse 22 to 24. So keep in mind, in this, we're talking about first a woman that is a Gentile that becomes Israel, or an Israelite. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coasts, and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with a devil. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, Send her away, for she crieth after us. But he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So this was a Canaan woman, a Gentile, that recognized the Lord of Israel, and she asked him to heal her daughter. And the Lord says next in verse 28, Then Jesus answered and said unto her, O woman, great is thy faith, be it unto thee even as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour. So the disciples couldn't understand how a Gentile woman recognized him, yet the disciples didn't recognize that he was the king of Israel at the time. They recognized him as a somewhat Messiah, which means like king, but they didn't really understand the scriptures. But this woman, just by faith, by the Holy Spirit, recognized who Christ was and asked for him to heal her, just as the Roman soldier asked Jesus to heal his son. And then the Lord also replied, No greater faith have I seen amongst my people. So he declared also too there that his people, he's always for his people, and his people is called Israel, for he says he's come not but the lost house of Israel. But then again, who is Israel? Israel are those that are saved by the blood, and that's part of the communion. When we break bread and drink the wine represents the blood, as when he was crucified on the cross, came out the blood of his body. He is the lamb, just as the former Israelites had to cut the throat of the lamb, and then they cooked it, and then they ate the lamb. The lamb represents the bread, and then the blood, or wine, or water, represents the covenant, the blood that you needed. Just like in during the time of Egypt, they had to put the blood of the lamb on the door. If they did it, regardless if their blood was linked to a tribe of Israel, it didn't matter. If you didn't put the blood of the lamb on that door, your firstborn child would have been taken. So it's very important to understand how Gentiles are brought in to becoming Israel, becoming part of the covenant, become part of the house of Israel, because the original Israelites at the time backslid, they became blinded, and thus they became Gentiles. So he's not coming for a certain group, he's coming for as many as he can call to come to be part of his marriage, to be part of the light, to be part of the congregation, and they would be called by one name, and that would be Israel. And then I'm going to go into the grafting of the branches. But first I'm going to go into Romans chapter 10, verse 19 to 20. It says, "But I say, did not Israel know? First Moses saith, I will provoke you to jealousy by them that are no people, and by a foolish nation I will anger you. But Esaias is very bold, and saith, I was found of them that sought me not. I was made manifest unto them that asked not after me. But to Israel he saith, all day long I have stretched forth my hands unto a disobedient, a gainsaying people." Now I'm going to go into, where is that verse in the Old Testament? That is in Deuteronomy. But before I do that, I'm going to go into the branches and the roof. And then we'll go in to see where how Moses spoke of this. And then we go into chapter 11 of Romans, verse 1. "I say then, hath God cast away his people? God forbid. For I also am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin." So we see here that even he, who is a disciple, is telling the people he's talking to, even he is Israel. God never he never cast away his people. So he was always coming for the lost sheep. And we don't know who is Israel. We just we preach his word, we guide people to his laws, and we explain to them what to look out for when Christ does come again, because he's going to come for all his people. He's not going to take a portion of his people away and then leave the other half, because everyone will be part of one house. There's not two houses. There is one house. Then chapter 11, verse 11. "I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? God forbid, but rather through their fall salvation has come unto the Gentiles, for to provoke them to jealousy." To provoke them, who is them? That is Israel, to jealousy. So salvation has come unto the Gentiles, which means that not all the Gentiles will be saved, but a good portion of them may be saved to resurrect the Israels. So what it means to resurrect Israel is, whereas it says in chapter 83, verse 4, Psalms, "They have said, let us cut them off from being a nation." Who is them? Let us cut Israel off from being a nation, that the name of Israel is no more remembered. So when it says that, "I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? God forbid, but rather through their salvation, through Israel's," God forbid, but through their fall, through Israel's fall, salvation has come on to the Gentiles, for to provoke Israel to jealousy. So he goes to save the Gentiles. Now what it means is those Gentiles that truly do recognize and become part of the covenant will recognize that they are Israel, and they will become the light, they will become the word, they will become the path to bring others, to build up a great house, to build up a great nation. And then there will be other Gentiles that will be preaching a different doctrine. They'll be zealous for the Lord, but it'll be a false zealous. And those are the ones that are going to provoke that zeal for the true Israelites that do recognize the truth, that do recognize the Lord, because the Israelites during the time when Christ came in flesh, they became Gentiles. They were following the ways of Gentiles in the land. The Pharisees were like kings and governments. So they forgot the word. They forgot the way that they should live, how they should view the world. And they were just listening to the Pharisees as if they were a type of president or a type of government. Because at that time, they wanted to be similar, like Rome or any other country. And they wanted the whole world to bow down to them, and they wanted to rule over the world. But with the way their mentality was and how they viewed things was polluted. So that's why the Lord said in 3 days, if you destroy this temple in 3 days, I will resurrect it. And there'll be more in in depth into another video about the resurrection. But the resurrection itself, real quick, is a symbolic to resurrecting his people, the house of Israel, the great nation of Israel, the promised land, to bring all his people to be a great light and a beacon for the whole world. Now we go into chapter 11, verse 16. And we go through that to 26. And it says, "For if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy. If the first works which are Israel, be righteous, be holy, the lump, the congregation, is also holy, is also righteous. And if the root, which would be the king Israel, be holy, which is righteous, so are the branches, which is the church, or the seed, or you could say the people, or the house." The branches is another word for a group of people. "And if some of the branches," so now I'm going to put the words will be correctly spoken. "And if some of Israel's be broken off, and thou being a wild olive tree," which resembles the Gentiles, "being wild olive tree were grafted in among Israel, and with Israel partakest of the root of the Lord Christ of Israel," because he's always noticed as the Holy One of Israel, "partakest of the root and the fatness of the olive tree," and the fatness, which is the works of the olive tree, being being Christ, being the root, being the olive tree, the body. "Boast not against the branches, boast not against Israel, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root." So if we boast that, oh, we're saved, and then we say, oh, well, Israel has a covenant, a different covenant, or a different promise, but we're going to call ourselves a different house name, a different congregation, and we're going to boast about the Lord, but not recognize Israel. It says, "Boast not against the branches, boast not against Israel, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root." So if we boast, we do not bear, we do not, Israel wouldn't, Christ, Israel would not be in us, because we boast in a provoking way. "Bearest not the root, but the root thee. Thou wilt say then, the branches were broken off, that Israel were broken off, that Israel backslid or was blinded, broken off, that I might be grafted in, that the Gentiles might be grafted in." So here there's a lot of Christians that say, oh, well, because of Israel's fall, because of their blindness, now the salvation has gone to the Gentiles. Now the Lord is focusing on the Gentiles, and he's choosing to save the Gentiles, and he'll come back for Israel. This is what it's telling you not to do. But many people are doing this very thing. "Thou wilt say then," the Gentiles will say then, "the branches, which is Israel, were broken off, were destroyed or scattered, that I might be grafted in." We shouldn't be saying this of our brethren, because it would be one house, and we would all be under the same name, which would be Israel. So why are we calling ourselves different house names? "Well, because of unbelief they were broken off. Because of unbelief Israel was broken off, and thou standest by faith, but not high-minded, but fear. For if God spared not the natural branches," which again would be Israel, "take heed, lest he also spare not thee, lest he also spare not the wild olive branch." And we also see how on Mount Sinai, he broke off a lot of the Israelites there when they worshipped the golden calf, and they did not believe. They went into unbelief, and they were broken off. And we've seen that many times throughout history, how when they were walking in the desert, a certain generation was destroyed before they were led to the promised land. So we see it's not just a one-time thing. This has happened many times before. So then what makes you a child of Israel? What makes you Israel? What makes you Israel is by following the Lord's ways, by believing in Him, trusting in Him. And that's all part of this salvation. And then you being that, you must be a light to others and guide them into the salvation. And the name Israel is very important. But if God spared not the natural branches, if God spared not Israel, take heed, lest He also spare not thee. Behold, therefore, the goodness and severity of God on them which fell severity, but towards thee goodness, if thou continue in His goodness. If thou continue in His goodness, otherwise thou shalt also be cut off. So what would be His goodness? Well, remember, works without faith is dead. Faith without works is dead. Well, what are the guidelines that determines our works? That's through the law. That's through the commandments. And part of that commandment was when He changed Jacob's name to Israel, He made a statement, thou shalt not be known as Jacob, but Israel. So then why in the Bible do we see Jacob sometimes, and then we see the word Israel? Shouldn't these words be one and the same? Yes. And that's part of the commandments that He tells us we need to be strong in, lest we be destroyed. Because then it brings us in confusion. We start fighting against each other, saying which house is better, which congregation is better. And if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in, for God is able to graft them in again. So if we fall in unbelief, so if we sin and we go away from the Lord, and then we come back to Him, we realize what we did wrong, and we come back to Him, He can still graft us in. So if there was a rapture and then there was no salvation for us to be grafted in, this would go against His word. For He is always willing to graft people in all the time. And if we're all one house, and we're all part of one great light, then if you were to rapture a part of His people, that again would be false doctrine. Because we would all be one part of the same body, all part of the same root. So if He were to take one portion, He must take all of us. And He said He would not take all of us, because as long as He was in the world, His spirit, or a portion of Him, which is His people, then the light would always be there. Verse 24, if thou were cut off of the olive tree, which wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature, to Israel, into a good olive tree, into a righteous image of Christ, how much more shall these, which be the natural branches, be Israel, be grafted into their own olive tree? So how much more would Israel then themselves be grafted into another root, another Christ, another king? And then those that are saved, that were called Gentiles, are grafted into a separate root, a separate king? No, He's telling you that is not so. We would all be grafted in. How much more shall these, which be the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? He makes a question mark about it. He's telling you that there is no separation between the natural branches and the wild branches. If they all are connected to the same root, then they're under the same house. They're under the same blessings. They're under the same baptism, under the same faith. And what will be the name that the Lord gave us for the name of that church, that house? And that was Israel. For I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own concepts, in your own understanding, that blindness in part is happened to Israel, until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in, until the fullness of the Gentiles provoke His people to start recognizing Him, instead of them following the ways of the land and having it become a whoredom, an abomination. Because that's what happened when He came in flesh the first time. The land became a whoredom. It became a desolation. When He walked into the temple, they were selling animals not based on their sin, but based on people were buying higher animals for to dissolve. It's like going to a Catholic church and praying all these different prayers for, I don't know, it basically became a ritual. And the Lord was very upset because he doesn't go by rituals. Rituals pollute his path. They pollute his teachings. And so they became Gentiles in the temple. They were selling the animals. And like I said again, when you sacrifice an animal, it's based on your type of sin. Will be determined what animal you would sacrifice. So that's why he said, you turn my father's house into a den of thieves, because you're stealing people's salvation, is what he was saying. And it says in verse 26, and so all Israel shall be saved. It is written, there shall come out of Sion the deliverer, or also known as the Redeemer, or the Holy One, and shall turn away ungodliness from Israel. So right here, it doesn't tell you that he's going to take people out, but he will come, and he will be the deliverer. He'll be the one to bring all of his lost sheep from all the many nations to the promised land, and then judge the whole world, to convict all that is ungodly, as is spoken in Jude, that Enoch actually spoke of. Then I'm going to go into chapter 15 of Romans, verse 10. And again he saith, rejoice ye Gentiles with his people. Rejoice with his people. Do not rejoice against his people and say you're better, the Lord loves you more than another group of people. Rejoice with his people. Rejoice, because he didn't say the Gentiles are his people. He said to the Gentiles, which are outcasts or strangers, he's telling the outcasts to rejoice with his people. And his people were always known as not Jews, but Israel. So even they would call themselves Jews and don't recognize their name as Israel. Even they are somewhat blinded. And I'm going to go into this one. I'm going to go into the Old Testament real quick. Chapter 10 of 1 Corinthians, verse 15. I speak to wise men, judge ye what I say. The cup of the blessing which we bless, is it the communion of the blood of Christ? The bread which we break, is it the communion of the body of Christ? For we being many are one bread, and one body, for we are all partakers of that one bread. Behold Israel after the flesh, are not they which eat of the sacrifice partakers of the altar? Well, what he's trying to tell us is, remember, back in the time, Israel had to take a lamb. And how would they do the sacrifice? They would cut the lamb's throat, the blood would come out, and the blood represents the blood of Christ, the blood of the lamb. And then they would cook the lamb, which represents the bread, and then they would eat the lamb. So when he did the Last Supper, he was doing a covenant. It was somewhat new because they were used to killing the lamb and then eating the lamb, but instead we have the bread and we drink the wine. The wine represents the blood, or his covenant that we are under, that we're brought in to his congregation. And then the bread represents the body, represents how we are one with the Lord, just as he created himself a fleshly image, that he is ruler over both heaven above and underneath. He is not a separate son, but he came as one of us to show that he is with us. This is why he did not tell us to bow down and worship him, but that he would call us brothers, and that he would call us sons, and we would be equal with him. We would rule beside him. Would I say then that the idol is anything, or that which is offered in sacrifice to idols is anything? Verse 20, but I say that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice, they sacrifice to devils, and not to God. And I would not that ye should have fellowship with devils. Ye cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. Ye cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and the table of devils. Do we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than he? So right here, what it's saying is, are we to provoke the Lord by saying the communion that we take right now with the bread and the wine is something that Israel, the former people, I don't want to say former, our former fathers, our former brethren, is it something different than they did? No, we're doing now the same thing they did. We're just not killing a lamb. Just like Moses, he would sprinkle the blood of the lamb on the people. So we have to understand that it says right here in verse 17, for we being many are one bread and one body, one body. We being many are one body, one bread, one nation, one congregation. There shouldn't be so many different congregations, Catholic, Christians, and so on. And then you have Judaism. We should all be one congregation, one people under one name of a house that the Lord gave, which was again Israel. Now I'm going to go into the Old Testament. And now I want to quickly go real quick into, I'm going to go into Deuteronomy, chapter 32, verse 20. And this goes with what was said in Romans. Let me go back to that. Here, what was said in Romans, in chapter 10 of Romans, verse 19. But I say, did not Israel know? First Moses saith, I will provoke you to jealousy by them that are no people, and by a foolish nation I will anger you. Well, here it says in Deuteronomy, chapter 32, verse 20, and he said, I will hide my face from them. I will see what their end shall be. Well, hold on. I'm going to go to verse 19 first. Actually, I'll go to 18. Of the rock they begot thee, thou art unmindful, and hast forgotten God that formed thee. And at that time when he came in flesh, the people have forgotten, O Lord. They have forgotten what it means, how Mary gave birth, and Joseph wasn't the actual biological father, how the Lord formed his own flesh as he forms us in one of his own temples, and he came out of one of his own temples, which was Mary. And we should have recognized right there that the Lord himself does all these things. Unmindful, and has forgotten God that formed thee. And when the Lord saw it, he abhorred them because of the provoking of his sons and of his daughters. And he said, I will hide my face from them. I will see that their end shall be. I will see what their end shall be. For they are a very forward generation, children in whom is no faith. Children of whom they are very forward generation, children of whom there is no faith. Romans chapter 10, verse 21. But to Israel he saith, all day long I have stretched forth my hands unto a disobedient and gainsaying people. Saying the same thing, just slightly wording it differently, but it's the same thing. Going back to Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 20, I'll read that again. And he said, I will hide my face from them. I will see what their end shall be. For they are a very forward generation, in whom is no faith. They have moved me to jealousy with that which is not God. They have provoked me to anger with their vanities, and I will move them to jealousy with those which are not a people. I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. For a fire is kindled in my anger, and shall burn unto the lowest hell, and shall consume the earth with her incense, and set on fire the foundations of the mountains. Going back into chapter 10 of Romans, verse 19 to 20. But I said, did not Israel know? First Moses saith, I will provoke you to jealousy by them that are no people, and by a foolish nation I will anger you. Just verse 19 right there. So we see that this in Deuteronomy is where Moses said it first, and then it's repeated in Romans. So it's not that he forsake his people. He came for the lost sheep. But because they acted like Gentiles, he said, okay, you love the Gentiles, you love their ways so much more than my ways. I will hand you over. I will scatter you amongst the Gentiles. You will live in their land. You will worship their gods. You will follow their laws and follow their ways. And because of this, they will worship me. And through this, I will provoke you through anger, for I am jealous that you have chosen another husband instead of following your first husband, which is the Lord Christ of Israel. So our former brothers ended up going to another husband, divorcing the Lord at first, going to another husband that turned out to be false, a false Christ, false gods, in other words, devils. And then he says, by a foolish people, by a foolish nation, by Gentiles, I will provoke you to rise up and love me, remember me, and follow my ways. And this is what is happening right now. So he's calling his people out from among all the Gentiles, those people who are willing to open their eyes, those people who are willing to see the truth, are welcomed into the congregation, into the covenant of being Israel, being as our brothers were, following his laws, following the salvation, recognizing that the Lord is the Holy One, recognizing that the Lord is the Holy One of his people. And then I want to real quick go into Deuteronomy chapter 4. Chapter 4, verse 39. Know therefore this day, and consider it in thine heart, that the Lord He is God in heaven above, and upon the earth beneath. There is none else. So why are we saying that Jesus Christ is a son of the Father? This is blasphemy. He tells you right here in the very beginning, before he even manifests himself in flesh. 39. Now therefore this day, and consider it in thy heart, that the Lord He is God in heaven above, and upon the earth beneath. There is none else. He came in flesh on the earth to show to his people he is the Father, and he will do it again in the second coming. And if we do not recognize that when he comes again, that he is the Father, and we are waiting for some other sign, some other thing to happen, we will not recognize that he is the Lord over all, both heaven and earth. So it's very important that we recognize that Jesus Christ, or also known as Emmanuel Christ, also known as Yeshua Christ, either however you want to say the first name, is still Christ, which means king, and his first name, which means Emmanuel, means God with his people, or within, because he is with us, because he has his own fleshly temple among us. So he is with us, but his spirit is also within us. And the Christ means he is king. And then the word Israel means the name of the people that he calls to rule over, which is part of his name too. For we will share the same name of him. We will share the same house. And then I want to go to Psalms chapter 60, verse 1 to 5. O God, thou hast cast us off. Thou hast scattered us. Thou hast been displeased. O turn thyself to us again. Thou hast scattered us. Thou hast been displeased. He said before, I will scatter you amongst the nations. I will scatter you amongst the Gentiles. For I will provoke jealousy. Or how is it the other way around? I will be jealous and provoke. Either way, he uses the Gentiles to bring us back to being zeal for him. And scattered us, thou hast been displeased. O turn thyself to us again. Thou hast made the earth to tremble. Thou hast broken it. Heal the branches. Heal the branches. The natural branches. Heal the branches and the wild branches that he is allowed to come into the root. Heal all the branches, that we may be of one body, one root, one tree, one house, one church, one congregation, one temple. Must I go on? So therefore he is saying right here in chapter 60, we are one nation, one people. We shouldn't be calling different names for different churches, because then it causes confusion. And that's how false Christs rise, and false prophets prophesize of things that is not doctrine according to the Lord. Heal the branches thereof, for it shaketh. Thou hast showed thy people hard things. Thou hast made us to drink the wine of astonishment. He had us drink the wine of devils, because we cannot do both. So when he came in flesh, we were drinking the cup of devils, and he was very mad, and he scattered us to say, okay, you wanna be like the Gentiles who sacrifice unto devils and drink of the cup of devils, then I will let you do that. I will scatter you. I will make you learn a hard thing, so that you will rise again, and you will know that I am the Lord. Thou hast drink the wine of astonishment. Verse 4, thou hast given a banner to them that fear thee, that it may be displayed because of the truth. Fear thee, that it may be displayed. A banner. What is this banner? It's not the cross, but this banner is the body, the temple that is healed. Because we are an image. We already are the statue. We already are the symbol of Jesus Christ's crucifixion. We are that symbol. And the time that we really recognize what we are to him, what our bodies are, and how we are, that's when we will truly be carrying the banner. But until then, we won't fully understand how important our bodies are to him, how he wishes to dwell within us, dwell within his temples, how a statue that's built by the hands of man cannot speak, cannot save you. There's no point praying to it. There's no point using it as idolizing it. And he says, do not make any images of heaven, the earth, or anything, because you will fall and forget what your body represents. Thou hast given a banner to them that fear thee, that it may be displayed because of the truth, that they believed may be delivered, save with thy right hand and hear him. Now, am I saying that having a cross or having something is necessarily evil? No, but it is very easy to be deceived by it and to forget what your body means and what your temple is, and to not think that the cross represents Jesus Christ, but your body itself represents that. Your if we're to kill ourselves daily, then we are to sacrifice ourselves as the Lord did. We are to sacrifice ourselves, and that is how you are born again. If we die daily, then we must be born daily. That's what the baptism is for. And that's how his Spirit, which represents the blood, brings us always back in. And that's why we do the communion as a reminder of the covenant. And then real quick in Psalms 83, verse 26, he shall cry. Hold on. Let me go to Psalms 89, verse 18 and 19 first. It says, for the Lord is our defense, and the Holy One of Israel is our King. Then thou speakest in vision to thy Holy One, and sayest, I have laid help upon one that is mighty. I have exalted one chosen out of the people. Exalted one chosen out of the people. Therefore he came as his people in flesh to exalt himself amongst the people, to be the beacon of Israel itself, to guide us back to him, to build us back onto the rock, which he is the cornerstone. He is the rock in which we are built upon. We are built upon the rock. And it says, chapter 89, verse 26, and he shall cry unto me, thou art my Father, my God, and the rock of my salvation. So there cannot be a Father and then separate be a rock of salvation. These two are one and the same. He is the Lord above, and he is the Lord underneath the firmament. He is the Lord on earth, and he is the Lord in heaven. He is the same. He will not forsake us and leave us in darkness. He will bring us back to him. He will graft us back into him. He being the root, we are the branches. A tree that bears fruit is a righteous tree. A tree that bears no fruit is not grafted into him, and is a dead tree, is a wicked branch, a wicked tree. So I'm going to end it there, not being too long, and then I'm going to make a third, touching base on the fire. And real quick with that, I'm going to go to Isaiah chapter 10, verse 17. It says, and the light of Israel shall be for a fire, and his Holy One for a flame, and it shall burn and devour his thorns and his briars in one day. So I'm going to explain more on that, because that goes to, where is that in Romans? Is it Romans? Sorry about this. That goes into here's the branches. I'm trying to find the one where it talks about the cup. Here we go. It goes more into chapter 10 of 1 Corinthians. Ye cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. Ye cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and the table of devils. Now, why is that so important? Because that's where he will use the fire to burn us. And when he brings us back, and when we have been scattered amongst the Gentiles, the fire is going to burn the those that are in darkness. They won't want to hear the truth. This is why he says They have hated me before they have hated you. But hold on. There's chapter 11 of 2 Corinthians, verse 2. For I am jealous over you with godly jealousy, for I have exposed you to one husband, that I may present you as a virgin to Christ. Verse 22. Are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they the seed of Abraham? So am I. So even he's showing you that we are of one Lord. But when it talks about the cup of devils, I'm just going to briefly mention real quick. And because the fire aspect goes into the two witness. And then chapter 18, verse 6, reward her even as she rewarded you, the double unto her double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled to her double. How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously. So much torment and sorrow give her, for she saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death, and mourning, and famine, and she shall be utterly burnt with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judges her. Now I just read briefly in Isaiah that the Lord is a fiery flame, just like on Mount Sinai. He was the flame that Moses put his hand into, and when he took it out, it was bones, and then he put it back in, and he took it out again, and it was his own flesh. But more importantly, this has to do with if you drink from the cup of devils, what happens? The Lord will burn you up, and not just by himself. We are flames. He's a burning fire, but we are flames. And we shall judge along with him those that drink from the cup of devils. And I'll do a video on that. So I ask you to remember, let me go back to it, and Ephesians chapter 4, remember this, verse 4, there is one body and one spirit, and it says there is one body, just as there is one bread and one body. There is one body and one spirit, even as ye are called in one hope for your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all. And remember, the Father is also known as the Holy One of Israel. He comes for his lost sheep. He calls many to be part of that great blessing of that salvation. And again, 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 2, for I am jealous over you with godly jealousy, for I have exposed you to one husband, that I may present you as a chaste virgin to Christ, which would be the Lord of Israel. And then lastly, 1 Corinthians again, verse 17, for we being many are one bread and one body, for we are all partakers of that one bread. So many times it's telling you there is only one church, one house. We should be making so many different church names, Lutheran, Presbyterian, Christian, Catholic, Baptist church, and all these different names. He already gave us a name. Why don't we use it? The Church of Israel. And be under that banner, be under that righteousness, and follow truly and understanding the Lord, why he has done what he has done, why he has scattered his own people, because they were doing something wrong that we are doing wrong even to this day still. So I'll end it with there, and I'll do another video on going into that fire and what it means to drink of the devil's cup, and with Isaiah, how he is a burning fire and we are flame, and flame shall come out of our mouth, as it says in the two witnesses. For there's only two witnesses, the Father that bears the witness of his children, his sons, and his sons that bear the witness of his Father. So thank you, Lord. Keep our eyes open. Teach us the truth. Help us understand why you have done what you have done, why it's so important we follow in your commandments and your laws, and why these days are so wicked, and why we must stand strong against many doctrines that come against your word, and to truly seek your word and understand what you're truly trying to say, and how you are one house, you're one husband. You were a husband over the Israelites, and you're still the same husband, and you still call us by the same name that you called us before, Israel. And we need to open our eyes to this. This is a great time that we can be brought in, who were once far off from the circumcision, from the covenant, from the blessings, from salvation. We were far off at one time, and now we can come into your house. You call us all to your marriage, to be the branches of that one root. So thank you, Lord. You are the exalted, you are the comforter, you are the redeemer, you are the deliverer, you are the mighty, you are the chosen, you are the Lord over in heaven above and on the earth, of all flesh and of all temples and of all of your seed. You are the mighty root in which we are grafted into, our one husband. Thank you, Lord. In your holy name, Jesus Christ of Israel. Amen.